All right, welcome everyone. This is Chris Petri. Thanks again for coming by, and we're in the studio and we're having an enjoyable time. We're going to create an ink and wash painting today. If you follow my channel on a regular basis, you'll know once in a while I do ink and washes. They're really fun. It's just essentially, a pencil sketch first, just to lay out the design and the overall subject matter we're working with, and then we add some ink. And then we'll do some washes over the ink once the ink dries. So it's really a fun way to change our process a little bit once in a while. I think it's really good to once in a while just do some different things. You know, some watercolor artists, they also paint acrylics, or they might paint oil painting as well. They might do oils. So they might do, quite a bit of work in oils, and then also spend time doing watercolor. So I think if you're versatile with your art, it'll tend to be a little more interesting. And if I know sometimes if I get a little bored with maybe just doing the traditional pencil sketch and overpainting with the watercolor washes, I'll do some ink and washes, or I'll just work with maybe just ink on paper, and maybe do some interesting things with that. So I always say, hey, you're the artist, have some fun. If you find sometimes you're getting a little bored, or you need something else to work on, it's always great to just maybe change a little bit, introduce something new into your watercolor routine. And again, ink is a great way to do that. If you use some ink with along with your watercolors, that can really be incredible fun. So we're going to do that here. And so the first thing we'll do is we'll just put some tape on our paper here. And we're going to do a nice just maybe like a countryside scene, like with a road. And we're going to take advantage of the three-dimensional feel of our composition today. If we can put some dimensionality into our paintings, that's going to really look good. And so I'll put some tape, some good drafting tape here, and we'll. This is the Pro brand. And they also make artist tape too, Pro artist tape and Pro drafting tape. I find those are the two best. I think I get these online, and sometimes they're at the local store, the local art store I go to. I have a few art stores I go to in my local area, and some of them carry this. So it depends on if they have it in stock. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So I'm just going to tape my border, and tape is really good too. We can put some markings on it to create maybe some hash marks with our design. So we'll do that. We'll go around just to make sure this side of the tape is really sealed well. The inside border of the tape, the exterior border is not all that important, this part, but as long as this is really good, especially the bottom one, because the water tends to flow downwards with watercolor, and it's good to keep an eye on this one here, especially this seam of this tape here, and that's pretty good. And we'll take a pencil. We'll start off with a mechanical pencil, and we'll use a Sharpie marker too to maybe do some of our hash marks on our border. So this is going to be improv, so I'm not really going to work from anything. And I find this is also good too. Does this make sense? If we can sometimes do improv, just improvise and create paintings, drawings, just out of our imagination, or something that like an idea we can create in our mind, like a scene we might see, some ocean, water with a lighthouse, or maybe a cityscape scene with a building, or maybe a house in the countryside. If we can kind of just create once in a while those ideas without really using a reference photo or being there in person and doing it in plein air, that's going to really be a big help. Because sometimes when we're creating paintings from a photograph, or from being in plein air outdoors and doing an actual scene, sometimes we'll need to use that improvisation and that thought process to kind of maybe adjust the composition a little bit to make it better and easier to paint, and to make it look better and pleasing and more enjoyable as a work of art. So again, try to once in a while create something just out of your imagination, a little bit of fun. Doesn't have to be a full painting, can just be a small composition like this. And that's what I'm going to do here. And so I'm going to actually just mark out. Usually, I know from experience, I know from studying, thirds is always a nice way to lay out a painting. So if we have like 2/3, let's say if we're doing a landscape, 2/3 landscape and then 1/3 sky, or 1/3 landscape, 2/3 sky usually works out really good. So if we call this a third and a third and a third, we'll say this one here, let's do 2/3, or even a little more than that. Let's say, well, yeah, we can say 2/3. 2/3 will do the actual landscape, the mountains, the road, whatever we're going to do. We're going to create something. And then the other third will do sky, or maybe even a little bit less than that. We'll see how it works out, but I think it should be good around this ratio. Okay, so we have that. And then maybe we'll put our subject matter, in the center on this. So we'll do that. We'll make a center mark. So roughly center of the paper, we're going to make a road going through like a mountainous area in the countryside. And that was all we really needed. We could also, we can think about the light. Maybe we'll say, well, where's the light coming from? Well, maybe the light's coming from maybe the left over here. So we'll try this. We'll say the light's coming from the left side of the painting a little bit. And also, too, if you're familiar with light, for like outdoor lighting, usually you can also make a note, and let's say it's like noon lighting, or like morning or evening. So you can make a note on your, like if this is a sketchbook and you're outdoors, you can make notes in your sketchbook with pencil or pen or whatever. Morning, evening, noon, morning. Maybe dusk. So you can kind of make different notes on what time of day it is, and that'll give you also a good indication of your lighting. So if it's noontime, lighting's going to be pretty much a lot of times overhead. So you'll get the shadows being right underneath the subject matter, and not so much, you won't get the long shadows. So we'll talk about that as we go here. So we're going to say this is noon lighting. So we're going to say this is around noontime, after, the middle of the day, or around noontime. And let's just go with a real simple idea of, before we do that, let's take a quick break, and we'll come back, and I see my battery is flashing on my video camera, so we'll come right back. Okay, we took a quick break, and isn't that good? Take a break. Once in a while, you have to take breaks, right? That makes a big difference if you're painting and drawing, and we're doing all these interesting details with our watercolors. Let's take breaks, every 15, 20 minutes, just relax a little bit, and then come back over to our table here. And I work standing up here at my table. I have my video camera up above here. And let's see, let's go with our pencil here. So we're just going to use a mechanical pencil. And we did our hash marks, and we kind of made some notes. And these are always great to do. Does that make sense? Couple notes that we can refer back to as we're doing our creative process. And of course, this one too is especially if we're not working from a photograph, and we're working actually doing just like a more of an improvisational painting like this. These notes are even more important, because in this way, if we're not working from, let's say, a reference photo, or if we're outdoors painting or so forth, we might lose track of where some shadows have to go, or where some light might be on a certain subject and so forth. So, okay, now we're going to improv here, and let's see, okay, so our mountains, let's make our mountains up here. We'll just have an interesting flow of mountains there, mountain peaks. And we can go with some more here. We're just doing super light pencil sketches here. And about here, about 1/3. This is about where we're going to start to see what we'll do is we'll create a road going through our picture here. So we're going to pretend that this is the road. And we're here. And then we're going to create a road going right through the, and as we do that, we remember the road will stay level. Okay, so we've created a road here, and we'll do some, maybe over here we'll have some trees over here, trees over here, and I'm just making some, we're improvising here. I'm just making some tree shapes, and then as we get further in the distance, we're just going to make those tree shapes a little bit smaller. Like that. So we're just thinking of everything is getting smaller as it goes further away from us in the picture. So here we have the road. The road is funneling down, smaller and smaller as it goes. And this would be what we would see out in real life. And then the road gets thinner here as it goes, and then thinner. And then the trees are we're just doing some fun groupings of trees here, and they're going to get smaller and smaller, and that'll just give us create that feeling of distance and that dimensionality we're looking for. And we're just going to have some fun here. And then these preliminary sketches here are just to give us a guide, and we're going to make some telephone lines here and a telephone pole. So we're going to create that. And then here when I draw this telephone pole, I basically just have my hand resting very lightly on the paper, on the pad of paper. And then I just hold the pencil tightly, have a good hold of the grip of the pencil here. And then I just hold the pencil still and just slide my whole arm back. And if I do that, it just goes very easily, the line, to get that straight line like that. And then we'll make the top of the telephone pole here, and there's some supports under that. And then maybe we'll have another smaller, and then there's some details on that, and we'll just do some indication lines. And then we're going to do this one here, a little less detail, smaller, this telephone pole, like that. And we're just going to make the lines go down like that. And then we'll make another one there. And at that point, so we're making the telephone poles along the road here, and they get smaller as they go until eventually, we don't really see them because it's very in the distance here. Everything is more is smaller in scale, so we wouldn't see all those details in the very distance here. So we'll put a couple of telephone poles here close by, and then as they go further into the distance. So that's a little fun thing you can do to make to practice distance. Having that dimensional feel in the painting is to make things smaller as they go further into the distance and farther into the picture. And we'll have a couple lines in the road maybe. And we're going to have fun here. This is just loose ideas of creating some interesting compositions, just doing improv. We're just improvising here. And these are the large mountains in the distance. All right, perfect. Now that we have our pencil sketch down, and this is our preliminary sketch we're doing, just so that we have a good guide, so that once we start in with our ink drawing, we have this. We'll just go over this with our ink. So we have our template in essence. Does that make sense? We use a light pencil sketch. That's our template. And then when we go in to do our ink, and we're going to use Speedball Super Black India ink. And I'm just going to put that into a small ink well. I buy these online. These are just little ink wells. And squeeze some ink in there. Maybe a little bit of ink, not too much. Always be careful with ink. If you have good furniture or something, you can put down a tablecloth or something so it doesn't spill. And all right, so we can get started even. Let's get started on our ink drawing. And here in the foreground, we can use more ink, and you can be, you can have fun with this and do, feel free to have some fun, and it doesn't have to be perfect. We could just do some, lines like that. Maybe a little bit of a line there. Sometimes I like to just skip a couple spots here and there instead of doing every line completely. We can do some shadows. So this tree might have a shadow under it, so we could do that. And this can have a shadow too. And I'll do some shadowing under those trees here and on this side. And for the telephone pole, I'm going to make it's wood. It's kind of rough. It's not like a smooth surface. It's actually a large, round, cylindrical timber. So it's not perfect. And so we're going to get that. And some shadowing under the timbers up here. There's some wood timbers at the top of them. Telephone pole up here, and then here we'll do this one. And then it's also good to have some tissue. And maybe as you start to do things in the distance, we can tap off a little bit of the ink. So here I went a little too heavy with the ink on this telephone pole over here, but we're not going to get too worried. Since we're in the creative process here, I'll make this telephone pole larger and thicker, like that. And then that'll help this a little bit, like that. We'll make this one a little larger. And then we would tap off lots of ink and just get this one here lightly, like that. And sometimes ink can be a little bit, doesn't always work out perfect, that's for sure, with ink and wash. So, again, we're just having fun here. We're not trying to do a perfect painting. This might be something where if the ink is being a little unruly on your ink pen, this one here, sometimes the other side, the other side of this bamboo ink pen is it's a little better with the lines. It doesn't put as much ink out onto the paper, so it's all about experimenting and trying different things here. And our trees have some shadows under them, so I would put some shadows under the trees here. And maybe a couple branches and tree shapes like that. And we're going to do some of the hills here. Those can be lighter, the distant mountains. All right, I think we have a good amount of information here. Maybe maybe a little more interesting information here. Maybe maybe something just to in the very foreground here. Maybe a fence, a wooden fence. And there could also be some other small road signs here we could have. And again, I'm just having fun. I'm improvising. Maybe we'll put a sign here. And a shadow under that sign, like that. All right, we've had some fun here. This is ink and wash. Always fun, and we're improvising. Just a simple idea of a road going off into the distance in the mountains here. Some telephone poles, a couple signs, some trees, and we're all set. This will be ready for some paint. Let's let this dry. We'll take another break, and then we'll start doing some painting on this, some nice wash. Okay, we'll be right back. All right, we had an enjoyable break, and now we're going to come back and we're just going to get our watercolor paints ready. So here we have our, I just keep my palette in my paint box in a plastic bag. I keep it on a cool windowsill in the wintertime. I keep a paper towel in there with water, a spritzer bottle. I keep that moist, and it keeps the paints fine. So my paints are very moist, just as if I had fresh squeezed them right into the wells here in my palette. Okay, now this is the fun part. The most important part of this process when we're going to go in and do our watercolor painting over the top of our ink drawing, the most important thing is to definitely double check, look very closely at the ink, make sure there's no wet ink on there unless you want that look. I also think it's fun sometimes to leave some of the ink wet and puddly, and then you can add your watercolors to it, and it kind of mixes with the watercolors. That's a really interesting technique. That's fun to try that out. But for this particular painting we're doing here with the ink and wash, we're going to actually make sure that all of the ink is completely 100% dry. And what I did was I did use a blow dryer because I noticed there were a few spots where there was a little bit of wet ink. So before I started now with my watercolor painting and adding that, I took the blow dryer and made sure it was 100% completely dry. And this again is permanent Indie ink, Super Black by Speedball. And once it dries on the paper, it doesn't reactivate with water. So it's definitely a high quality ink, and it works beautifully. So we'll see that right now as we start to go in. And then what we'll do is we'll go in and we'll start doing some interesting colors here. We'll do some greens, cadmium lemon yellow, and this is sap green. And we'll do some purple. We'll put some purple over here. That's nice shadow color. And I got a little bit of the green in there, so that looks good. And then some yellow ochre, raw sienna, raw umber. And we'll do some cerulean blue. Okay, we could start with those colors. So we just started with some cadmium lemon yellow, sap green. We rinse our brush when we start going into the different colors. Mineral violet, which is purple. Rinse our brush again, then we go in and get some yellow ochre and raw sienna, maybe some raw umber. And then we rinse our brush again and we'll go in and get some cerulean blue. And that's kind of like the base of what we'll start with, and I think that'll be a good color selection. And then we'll remember too that the closer the in a landscape, the closer you are to the subject matter, it's going to be a little more vibrant in color, a little warmer in color. Let's say if it's a grass or something like that, or a bush or a tree, it's going to be a little warmer, so it's going to be more, in the yellows and golds and greens, or if it's green, it's a warmer green. And then things get a little cooler in the distance, so you'll see a little more blue in some of the trees and some of the landscape as it goes into the distance, and the mountains as well. And then even out in the further distant mountains, it'll be a little more purple, and of course our sky color will be the blue. So we'll just start out and we'll get some interesting color on here. And again, this is just, we'll mix and match colors, and we can go straight into the palette for our colors. I'm going to try to vignette this a little. So I'm going to leave more white paper on the outside edges of the composition. I'll do a little splashing. This is really fun, and little bit of green on this side just to balance it a little bit. Okay, and this field, and we can change around the colors. Maybe a little blue. So now we'll use a little more blue in this distant. Cerulean blue. And then you can see there's another hill over here. So I'm trying to capture that feeling of the hill over here. So we have one hill here, and then it dips down over and it gets the road. And if there's any way, if you see one of your whites that you have on your paper, you want to lift up some paint. I started to lose track of that white road there, but that's okay. And then our road here, we can and a little bit of warm and cool, so I used a little bit of cerulean blue and a little bit of yellow ochre, just a little bit on the road area. And again, this is just improvising. We're having fun here, just enjoying the ink and wash. And a simple color scheme, golds and greens, and then we add a little cerulean blue to the golds and the greens as we get out into the distance of the hills here. And then we're going to start going into the mountain area, the distant mountains. Maybe we'll use Viridian green, sap green, and we're going to keep it, and then we'll use some cerulean blue. We'll try to keep this pretty simple colors. I'm not going to mix a tremendous amount of colors here. And then maybe a little bit of burnt umber in there to gray it down a little bit. I'll go around those distant trees. And I just rinse off my brush, check off a little bit of the water, and I'll let that, I'll leave some white paper over there, and we'll do the same over here. And we'll just work around these street signs here. And we'll add a little bit of gold to this too, just to change the color a little bit. And again, this is just having fun, mix colors, try different things. You could do this type of painting a number of times. Try different colors, you know, that you might like. And, you know, you might want to try different colors than what I'm using here. You might think there might be something more interesting to you. Everyone has different colors, their favorite colors and all. But I guess the simple idea here is getting that ink drawing down, and then you can sort of just go for it and have a fun time doing the paint. And then we're going to go in, we'll get some purple, green, and I would use a little more blue. Gold, a little bit of gold, a little bit of and then we'll use some purple at the top. A little bit of burnt umber and purple. A little bit of green. And we'll just make those distant mountains with the purple. Here I could have left that that timber on top of the telephone pole, white paper. I went over it, no big deal. Next time I'll make that a little better. And you can kind of see how I just went a little bit cooler with my washes. I tried to, as we go into the distance of the painting. So I added more purple and blue into the mountain areas as we went into the distance, and then over here very little. And that kind of helps the feeling of the distant mountains and the distant hills. And then we'll put a little bit of blue. Cerulean blue in the sky here, and we'll be real careful not to, we'll try to keep that blue this is a good time for a break. Before we did the sky color, we could have we'll take a break now, and we'll come back and just do some touch-ups. But the sky's very minimal. We're not going to do too much with that. Okay, a fun country scene, ink and wash. You can't go wrong with this. Let's take another break. We'll do some final touch-ups here, and this will be good. All right, so now we're back, and we're going to finish up our painting. We're going to do some last-minute details to the painting, some adjustments here and there. So what I like to do, and that's why I always encourage everyone to take breaks, because when you take breaks, you actually really can step back, look at it, your painting and your composition, and kind of just like, sort of like game plan what you're going to do when you come into the next session where you're going to go in and do some more work. So I kind of thought in my mind, what do I want to do what do I not want to do? Sometimes that's a really good thing to ask. Does that make sense? Sometimes asking, what don't I want to do? Like, so I thought, what don't I want to do here? Maybe I sort of got that question when I was thinking, am I going to put some some numbers on this sign or some writing on this sign? And I thought, what I'm not going to do is I'm going to let that go. I'm just going to leave it like that. It looks a little more simple without any writing on the sign. So that's one detail I'll leave out. So it's kind of good to sort of, again, if you're taking a break and then you come back and you just look at things, you can kind of assess what you might want to do to finish up with the details. And you'll say to yourself, well, what may I want to sort of leave out, even though I think I might want to add something, asking that question. And you can always do a little more to your painting and then come back again and then say, yeah, I think I will add something like some numbers on this or some writing. So it's easier and better to go slower at the end when you're doing your details. Does that make sense? So you'd be more sparing on the details of your painting as you're finishing it up, so that you're giving yourself the opportunity to look at it and kind of, I guess, critique your own painting or make that the decision, like making that judgment. Do I want to add more details or do I think it looks good the way it is? And you can even take a day or two and let the painting sit and come back to it again and look at it and say, do I want to add a detail? But it's usually, you'll find if you stop before you put the last bit of details in there and you think about what you're going to add in and what you might want to leave out, that's a really good way to sort of look at it, And I think here we're going to, first thing I will do here is just, I'm just going to clean up the palette a little bit here, and the colors are getting a little muddy. So I'll just some things I did see I definitely wanted to do. Some green, purple, and some burnt umber. I wanted to get some more of the hills, the sway of the hills going this way. So I thought that would be good to do that. Just some loose, brush strokes just to get some of that feel of the land in the mountains here in the hills a little more defined. And I thought that was a good thing I should do, and that does look better. And maybe the same thing here. I'll go a little warmer. So I'll add some umber to that. Raw umber and some raw sienna. Just some more. Okay, I think that looks good. I can maybe soften this up a little over here. Okay. And I also thought we were going to do our trees here. So we're going to do so that's sap green, a little bit of burnt umber, a little bit of cerulean blue. And I'm going to add the bottom portion of the trees here first in that darker green. And then when we do the the tops of the trees, I'm going to go in with some yellow ochre and cadmium lemon yellow. Just some fun. Brush strokes just to have the, and some trees here in the distance. And if you go over a spot that you find you might have added too much water, paint, whatever, blot it up a little. Okay, so we did that, and a little more splashing just to add some more effect here a little bit. And we can also and I thought a little bit of shadowing over here would look good. And a couple spots got a little messy over there, no big deal. Okay, everything is looking fine. I think I'm going to add a little bit of titanium white with yellow ochre mixed in, just a little bit there. And we can do the same over here where that top of that timber is on the, we can add some white. Couple highlights on top of the telephone pole. Okay, I think I might add maybe a car. Maybe we'll add a car. So let's take another break. The reason I say that is I did add some wash to this roadway here. I'm thinking of adding maybe a small car. That'll make it even more interesting, so that this road has a car, and then we'll be fine. I think it'll be 100% after that. Let's take another quick break and let this dry, this roadway area dry here. We'll put in a car when we come back, and we will have a completed painting. Okay, we'll be right back. Okay, we took a break and we let the paint dry 100%. I used the blow dryer again, just a little bit over here on the road. I was thinking of adding in a car. Now, the great thing about ink and wash is you can also, there's a variety of pens you can buy and markers. Sharpies are great. They're permanent. They don't bleed once they dry. If you can try out your markers before you use them in your ink and washes, but I know Sharpies work fantastic. So here, at this point in the painting, if you really want to be 100% like ink and wash and you don't want to really use a marker like any permanent markers that you might find at the local art store or online, that's fine too. Again, this is a composition. I'm having some fun with this, so I'm not really so worried. Maybe if I was doing a gallery painting or, you know, maybe something for somebody as a gift, someone hired me to create a painting, I might not use a marker. I might just go back in and get my ink and do the ink. But this here is fine. So I'm just going to do a car. And we'll do the shadowing. So I'm going to do the tires and the shadowing a little bit. And then that should be good. And I will, it's always good to add the mirrors there. I will use some white paint on a few spots I saw that I would need to add some white paint. Just a tiny bit of titanium white with a little bit of yellow ochre mixed in there. I wanted to just get that bit of roadway there. And I wanted to put, I went over a spot there. I'd rather leave that white, a little bit of white under the car maybe for the shadowing. And I thought that was pretty much, yeah, that's pretty much good there. We could color in the car just a touch. We could do something a little different. Maybe we'll do some, maybe some red for, maybe we'll do some, couple red spots here for the taillights. And maybe we'll make the car cerulean blue. That should be pretty good. We can always, if you find you don't like the color, you want to change something, you can do that. You can lift up some paint with the tissue and make something a different color. Maybe we'll make some cobalt there. That looks pretty good. Cobalt blue. We didn't use cobalt in the painting, so that kind of stands out. Okay, this is good. Let's peel off the tape. And we'll just zoom in a little. All right, I hope you try this. Have fun with it. Ink and wash is great. All we used was Speedball Super Black Indie ink, a small plastic inkwell. We used a bamboo pen with the 2 different size points on it. Bamboo. And of course we use our regular watercolor paints. We use the Kolinsky Sable watercolor brush. This is like a number 10. Da Vinci Maestro brush. And then we just use some Sharpie pen and a little bit of titanium white for the little bit of highlights here and there. Other than that, that's it. It's really kind of simple. This is Arch's smooth paper, satin finish paper. And we had a fun time. Again, please try this. And if you haven't subscribed, we do this type of work every week, once a week. So if you hit the subscribe button and then you hit the notification bell also next to the subscribe button, this way you'll be alerted each weekend when we create a new painting. Sometimes we work in different styles. This is ink and wash. We do a lot of watercolor, just straight watercolor painting. And we're always working on something new. So we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.